Yes. Welcome, everyone, to the Marijuana Times Show for March 19th, 2018. I'm your host, Joe Klare. Thank you to everyone who watches this show and helps us spread the truth about cannabis. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org for a bunch of great articles. Also, every episode of this show can be found easily shareable with your social media networks, marijuanatimes.org. A lot of stuff going on there, as always. Today, talking about the progress of cannabis legalization in New Jersey, at least on the adult use, aka recreational side. Also, new universal pot labels in Colorado. New symbols that go on marijuana packaging, edible packaging, retail products, and the like. And also, California may be thinking about dropping taxes, at least temporarily, on recreational cannabis to help the market get up and running, compete with black market and illegal dealers, and so on. We'll talk about all of that coming up. But first, of course, I have to tell you, the Marijuana Times Show is brought to you by Natureside and their line of organic, all-natural pesticides. They're safe for everyday use, grow safe and poison-free. If you're a cannabis cultivator in a state where it is legal, you want to be using natural, organic pesticides to control your pests. You don't want to use harmful pesticides, harmful chemicals that people will later ingest. And you also want to be regulatory compliant. Every state just about with cannabis cultivation, legal cannabis cultivation, whether it's medical or recreational, has rules regarding pesticides. Natureside is approved for use in Colorado, Washington, and Oregon is on the approved for pesticide use list by the state agricultural departments in those states. And they're a proud sponsor, as I said, of the Marijuana Times Show. Naturesidecannabis.com. Go check them out. They will help you use safe products and be regulatory compliant in your state. This first story is from marijuanatimes.org by Jason Sander. New Jersey governor calls for recreational cannabis legalization. There's been some rumblings in New Jersey about possibly attempting decriminalization of recreational cannabis before full-scale legalization. This is a story I've been covering since this show began, and I've talked about and written about in articles on the Marijuana Times website for quite a few months, with the exit of Chris Christie as governor and the entrance of Phil Murphy as governor. He's pro-legalization. He said so in the campaign. He said so again recently. He said so again in what I'm about to tell you from this story. There's been some rumors of decriminalization and possibly going that way when it comes to adult use legalization in New Jersey. He said recently, I greatly respect those in this chamber who have proposed decriminalizing possession of small amounts of marijuana, and I thank them for recognizing the importance of doing what's right and just for those who carry criminal records for past possession arrests. Something they're very, very big on, the social justice aspect of legalization. We'll get to that in a minute. He continued, but decriminalization alone will not put the corner dealer out of business. It will not help us protect our kids, and it will not end the racial disparities we see. If these are our goals, then the only sensible option is the careful legalization, regulation, and taxation of marijuana sales to adults. Now, I get what he's going for here, and I agree with him. Obviously, legalization is superior to decriminalization. Legalization involves the legal sale of cannabis, and it has the added effects of undercutting the black market, undercutting the criminal element, undercutting the amount of violence that is associated with illegal drug dealing, illegal marijuana dealing, illicit drug dealing, whatever you want to call it. But this is a point I've brought up quite a few times. Linking legalization to racial disparities in arrests, or protecting our kids, these are all great things. Putting the corner dealer out of business, that's all great. That's all great. But those are all great side effects of legalization. Legalization, whether it's possession, growing, or sales, needs to happen for one reason, because it is immoral to criminalize people who are not infringing on the rights of anyone else. If you're growing a plant in your house, if you have a quarter bag in your pocket, if you sell a quarter bag out of a storefront to an adult, you are not infringing on anyone's rights. And that is why you're not a criminal. It undercuts the black market. It brings in tax revenue. It saves law enforcement resources. Drug dealers don't check ID, so it makes it harder for kids to get it. All that's great. It's fantastic. And that's, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing Governor Murphy in New Jersey. We're both on the same side. We both agree that legalization is superior to decriminalization. Decriminalization is just a half measure or a half step towards legalization. That's all it's ever been. That's all it's ever been good for. But it's better than prohibition? Absolutely. Decriminalization is. So when people decriminalize, that's great. But it's not the last step. There's a much more of the journey to get to. But we're not the first person to point this out, but we run into problems because when we use the good side effects of legalization to push legalization, and the people who are against legalization will cherry pick and straw man those arguments and say, well, you say it's going to do this, but it won't do this, therefore legalization is bad. Legalization needs to happen because you cannot criminalize people who are not infringing on the rights of anyone else. Period. Full stop. As the kids say, for some reason. I believe it's an old telegraph term. I'm not sure. But the kids these days, going back to the 1850s for their references. That's fantastic. But you get my point. And again, I'm all for, I agree with legalization. But we have to keep focused on what the reason is. Because people who grow and possess and sell marijuana aren't criminals. People who rob you on the street, that's a criminal. A murderer, a rapist, a thief. Someone who infringes on your rights in some way, that is a criminal. If someone beats you with a marijuana plant, they are a criminal. Not because they have a marijuana plant, but because they used a marijuana plant to beat you. The beating you with it is the infringement of your rights. Then possessing or growing a marijuana plant is not an infringement of anyone's rights. Moving on to KOAA.com. New universal pot labels aimed at reducing consumer confusion. This story out of Colorado. The Marijuana Enforcement Division of Colorado has adopted a single universal symbol for packaging and labeling marijuana. According to a release, this is effective immediately as the current M symbol for medical marijuana and other labeling will be removed. Why was it an M? It sounds really dumb. It's something that can easily be confused with something else. I know Russ Belville, who does his own podcast, Marijuana Agenda, and does a lot of writing as well. He's pointing out that why wouldn't the universal symbol for marijuana is already the pot leaf. Why wouldn't we just use the pot leaf? Why wouldn't that be the standard? Why wouldn't everybody just use the pot leaf? You see a big pot leaf on there, you know it's marijuana. Why? How that's not superior to an M, I don't know. There's an M right behind my head. That M stands for Marijuana Times. Does that mean that the packages are from the Marijuana Times, or they contain the Marijuana Times? Or if you eat them, you will hear the Marijuana Times show in your head? Of course not. That's a dumb symbol. M? Anyway, here is the new symbol. If you're watching the video, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, you can get the video at marijuanatimes.org. On YouTube and on Facebook as well, just search Marijuana Times. But so there is it's a diamond with an exclamation point at the top and in big letters THC in the middle. I guess the red is going to be for packaging, labeling for all types of medical and retail marijuana, and edible marijuana infused products or a retail marijuana product is going to have a black one. I don't know. It's still confusing. I mean, THC, to be fair, is much more specific and lets you know much more specifically that this product contains marijuana, especially THC. The adoption of a single universal symbol is part of our ongoing effort to protect public health and safety and advancing consumers' ability to identify products containing marijuana and reducing confusion stemming from two distinct symbols. One truly universal symbol also works to simplify and improve the industry compliance with regard to packaging and labeling. I mean, I agree, and with the fact, in principle, that a universal symbol is needed for marijuana packaging. It is very confusing for a child if they pick up a brownie that's wrapped. They think, hey, that's a brownie. That's fantastic. I'm a 6-year-old kid. I love brownies. I live for brownies. I see a brownie, I'm going to eat a brownie. Or gummies or whatever. Childproof packaging, big symbols, dare I say, rather decent halfway decent parenting to where your kids don't have access. I mean, we don't give kids access to our prescription drugs or our Drano or our beer. Why would kids have access to marijuana? I don't know. Seems a bit of bad parenting. Whether it's used in retail or medical marijuana products, the universal symbol helps both consumers and non-consumers easily identify that a product contains THC and avoid unintentional ingestion, said Karen McGowan, CDPHE's Deputy Executive Director. So, there you go. And I guess it only not only works for children. I can imagine elderly people who maybe are people whose eyesight isn't all that good. They may see that THC symbol and say, hey, I can't eat that brownie. But yeah, all in all, good job. I don't necessarily agree with the symbol, but every state is going to come up with a symbol more than likely. And they're going to do focus groups and studies and see which symbol works best and which works least. And in a couple of decades, every legalization program will have coalesced around a few symbols, and eventually there may be a national federal symbol. That wouldn't surprise me at all if the feds decide that marijuana is going to be legal or descheduled or whatever. They're going to get in on the game and say, no, your state symbols suck. Here's a federal symbol that we paid $600,000 to get graphically designed by some company. And here it is, and this is what you're all going to use. Would not surprise me in the least. This last story comes out of California. Forbes.com, California may drop cannabis taxes to give legal sellers a boost. As California cannabis businesses rush to get in line with new recreational rules, state lawmakers have proposed a measure that could give them some extra green to make it happen. A bipartisan pair of California lawmakers have announced a bill which would drop the state excise tax on cannabis to 11% from the current 15% for a period of 3 years. According to Leafly, the bill was introduced by Assembly members Tom Lackey, who's a Republican from Palmdale, and Rob Bunta, a Democrat from Oakland, along with 3 Democratic co-authors. Since recreational cannabis became legal in California at the start of this year, medical marijuana dispensaries and cultivators have struggled to make the transition to a new market, with new, often wait lists requiring steps towards being licensed and legal. Between legal cannabis banking challenges, the significant regulatory changes, and California's booming gray and black market operators, smaller businesses in particular, have had a lot to juggle in 2018. It has been kind of slow going in California. There's still holes in the system, obviously. It's brand new, and there's many large areas of California where recreational marijuana is either not legal yet, or the supply is low, wait lists, waiting, long lines, all that stuff. Could be the norm in California for quite a bit longer. The measure would also reportedly suspend a separate tax for cannabis cultivation in the state. Overall, these breaks would amount to a 9% price drop for customers, according to an outside assessment by New Frontier Data. California-based attorney Hillary Bricken commented in a recent interview that anything the state can do to promote legal operators will be critical to the industry's success. Quote, the state's own regulations calculated the markup on wholesale products to be 60%. Because new rules putting a sell-by date on products before July 1st, 2018, there's not a lot of inventory built up for stores to sell through the rest of the year. So that's, they're actually the reduced supply is jacking up prices, and then you have the massive taxes. That's jacking up prices, and that's not going to help a new industry, especially an industry that has to compete with an already established black market illegal industry that's well established through decades upon decades of being in operation, and it doesn't pay taxes and can sell high quality marijuana, especially in California, for much less than legal dealers can sell it for. And that is a problem. And me, politically, anything that's, makes prices lower for consumers, anything that lowers taxes, I'm for it. Yes, lower the taxes. 3 years, make it permanent. And people say, well, it's going to hurt the revenue, but it won't. It won't hurt the revenue, because dropping the price is going to bring more customers from the illegal side to from the illegal side to the legal side. More customers means more sales, which means more tax revenue. Overall, higher volume of sales, higher volume of tax revenue, more people actually paying the tax. And in many cases, modest tax cuts in any area will raise revenue because it will bring people to that area. The lower prices will bring more people in. Lower prices increase demand because people like that. They like to pay less. If they can get it legally and pay less than they would get it illegally, why would they get it illegally? It would make no sense. At least that's how it's supposed to work. We'll see. Thanks, everybody, for watching the Marijuana Times show for March 19th, 2018. Thank you to NatureSideCannabis.com for being a proud sponsor of the show. Go check out their organic, all-natural pesticides at NatureSideCannabis.com. Keep sharing the show. The podcast, as I said, is on Apple Podcasts. Search the Marijuana Times on there, and you find the shows, the videos at marijuanatimes.org, along with a bunch of great articles from a host of great writers. Go check it out, marijuanatimes.org. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out, and we'll see you next time on the Marijuana Times show.